Good afternoon, I'm Mai Rodriguez for a Solar News exclusive. Tension between China and the Philippines over the disputed Scarborough Shoal has hogged headlines in recent weeks. Now, the renewed tension began in April when a Philippine patrol boat encountered a fleet of Chinese fishing boats which had endangered maritime species of corals and turtles. Since then, the Chinese government has not relinquished its claim over the disputed area and issued a fishing ban in some areas in the South China Sea. Now, our reporter Miguel Ortilla will tell us now his first-hand encounter with the Chinese vessels closely guarding the Scarborough Shoal. Good afternoon, Miguel.
Good afternoon,
now, tell us, how did you get the idea that you can actually go to the Scarborough Shoal?
Ma'am, the idea came about when I think 2-3 weeks ago we went to Masinloc, Zambales. It is also a coastal town which I understand claims that that Scarborough Shoal is part of their jurisdiction. In fact, that's why they say it's called Bajo de Masinloc. So we went to Masinloc town and we talked to the officials. We also talked to the armed forces there and also the fishermen. And that's when they told us that fishermen actually still coexist in Scarborough Shoal. Chinese, Vietnamese, and the Filipino fishermen, they actually have good camaraderie in that area.
So for years and years, this camaraderie between Chinese fishermen and Filipino fishermen exists.
Yes, ma'am, that's what they told us. In fact, they even tell us stories that they would board each other's boats. And there was also one instance when one of the Filipino boats, I think one of the engines malfunctioned, and it was the Chinese that helped them rebuilding this part so they can get back home. So another part of that trip, we decided to talk to the fishermen, and it was clear from them that no one is actually barred from going. So that's when we thought, if one of the fishing boats would go, bakit hindi kami sumama? So that's when we talked to them, made arrangements, and there.
So you got the idea that you wouldn't have any serious problems
Yes, ma'am.
going to the Scarborough Shoal. How did you prepare for this trip?
Ma'am, it took us 2 weeks. Everything was done through phone because we couldn't travel because we were also following the developments from Manila as we are assigned in the Armed Forces beat and the Defense beat. So we still follow the stories here. And in the afternoon, I'd call them, the fishermen, and ask what are their plans, when are they going. And around a week before the trip, that's when we finalized that they're already allowing us to join. Of course, we had to give them some money for our food because they'd go there, they'd pay for their supplies. So we just contributed a bit.
And this was done last week around the arrangements that you had to prepare for. This was done Tuesday last week?
I think we started preparing a week before we left. So we finalized the trip. And they allowed us, but it's clear that they really have a planned trip. They're really going. Pupunta talaga sila sa Shoal. And they were kind enough na isama kami to bring us along with them. And our objective really was to show the kind of interaction that Filipinos and Chinese still have.
So this video that we're showing right now, this was earlier, that was the boat that you used. Describe to us, what kind of boat was it? How big was the boat?
The boat was around, if I'm not mistaken, around 12 meters. It's pretty sturdy. And in fact, they told us that they already used this boat to go to Palawan. It took them 2 to 3 days to travel. And I was advised that our trip to Bajo de Masinloc, Scarborough Shoal, would take us around 16 to 18 hours.
That's around.
So it's a pretty sturdy boat. We had a cook with us.
That's basically 2 days to go to the Scarborough Shoal.
Yes, ma'am. We had a cook with us. And the fishermen were really welcoming. Kumbaga, they considered us as kasama talaga nila, part of the team.
So this boat can accommodate up to how many people?
The captain of the boat told us that it could accommodate 20 people. But in our trip, we were only 8. Me and our cameraman, Danny Oblivias, and the 6-man crew of the fishing boat.
So finally, describe to us your trip going to the disputed Scarborough Shoal. How was it?
At first, kabado talaga kami, ma'am, because nakasakay na kami ng vessel. But with a fishing boat this big, this small rather, we're very nervous. And you're seeing the video now.
Let's show the viewers your video.
Yeah, this is one of the quick storms that we encountered. We were on our way to the shoal. I think this was day 2 already. And the waves were really strong. And there was rain, so we still pushed through. We still pushed through because the captain said it's still safe.
Despite the storm that you encountered, you had to sit through the storm. You had to sit through the night, or you had to spend the night in the ocean.
Yes, ma'am. During our first night, we stopped at one island. It was still near Santa Cruz, Zambales, because the captain decided to stay first since the waves are strong. It might not be that safe to go to Scarborough at that point.
So this video, this was the night, that night that you decided to sleep it off.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So as you can see, you can see in the video, this is a transistor radio. This is our only source of information. Yung mga balita, kung may bagyo, dyan namin siya nalalaman, dyan sa transistor radio na yan.
So anong mga balita that night about the tension in the area?
At this point, the news was full of corona stories still. So, but we'd wait for stories about the weather because they carefully monitor that because that's their only source. Kung may parating na low pressure area, we won't push through.
Yes.
And with regards to the stories related to Scarborough Shoal, we heard of this report that there's already a fishing ban in the area.
This was Thursday night.
This was Thursday night, but it says that the Chinese implemented a fishing ban. And that night also, in that same report, it said that the Department of Foreign Affairs, if I'm not mistaken, the Secretary himself said that they will not honor the said fishing ban.
What was the atmosphere like in the, in the boat? Like with your crew, with the fishermen that you were with? Tensionado ba sila? Or were they relaxed?
Ma'am, during our first days or first hours of travel, it was calmado, very normal. Because we have to understand that these fishermen have been going to the shoal for 20, 30 years, and there was never a problem. They coexist with the fishermen, and they didn't really expect anything to happen despite the said tension in the news here in Manila. Their stories are different.
So this boat that we're showing you at some point, what boat was that?
So this was already 5 in the morning of Friday. You're seeing already the Chinese maritime surveillance vessels guarding.
That was one of the Chinese vessels that you're seeing?
Yes, ma'am. If you can see the 2 white dots, those are the 2 marine surveillance vessels of China. This is the entrance of Scarborough Shoal. There's only one entrance to the shoal, and yung mga Chinese maritime vessels, they're the ones placed at the entrance.
So tell us, when you finally decided to go near the Scarborough Shoal, what happened?
The night before we spotted the 2 marine surveillance vessels, we decided to spend the night. First, nagpalipas kami ng gabi sa isang area because the captain said it might be safer to travel in the morning because mababaw dun sa shoal.
Yes.
And if you can't see the rocks, you might hit them. So around 5 o'clock, we decided to push through because they said it's already
So
safe.
this was 5 in the morning of Friday. And those Chinese vessels, what kind of vessels are they? Are they Navy vessels?
We did our research, and based from a Chinese agency, I understand they're paramilitary unit of the Chinese government. The Chinese say that they're not armed, they're just for monitoring their areas, their territories.
So how close did you get to the shoal?
At this point, to the shoal,
Yes.
the Chinese surveillance vessels are placed, I understand, around 10 nautical miles from the entrance. But since we still pushed through, they followed us until around 7 miles.
Is there video when the Chinese vessels finally closed in on you?